Welcome back to our last part of Let's Get Better Together, a video series that helps people get a good, solid foundation set for trading card games, how we can improve, and understanding the finer points such as probability and general gameplay mechanics. We've talked about in episode 1 how setting goals, finding the right deck, committing to a strict, well, I guess not strict, but a training program, along with setting up a play group can be very much a necessary part of playing card games. Second episode, we covered more about probability, understanding how likely it is that we can play cards and figuring out why certain cards are structured the right way so we can increase our odds of seeing the cards we need. This final episode covers a last piece of the puzzle, which is understanding terminology used in card games. This is such as doing things as people talking about a bell curve, playing things on the curve, line play, and things of that nature. And with that, let's go ahead and get into that information. So what I have here is we have a list of decks that we looked at for our probability, and we're going to cover those terms within them. So the first one we'll take a look at is the 1-year rush deck that is blue-green. What we're going to take a look at is the core terms I just spoke of. So when we talk about playing on the curve, it means that you're on your level and you're playing the cards that correspond with that level appropriately. So in this deck, it's pretty easy. On level 2, you want to see the Zaku 2 that, deals 2 AP, and if not, we play 2 gems. Pretty straightforward for an aggression deck where you're trying to just break through shields as possible. Where we get complicated is figuring out when do we play on what turns for the cards are the same. For example, do we play this Char Zaku 2? Do we play this one? Or do we play Rikdom? I can't really give you that answer without more context, and here's why. Depending on the type of situation that you're playing against, any one of those cards could be important. If you're playing against a blocker deck, the Rikdom that has Breach might be effective if you can kill the blocker while you're at it. You're still doing damage to the shield, and you're dealing with, a threat that could come back and swing at you. Maybe playing the Corsica base would be more advantageous to you if you don't have the Rikdom. If you're dealing with a blocker that has 4/4, this Zaku without a pilot isn't making a difference. There is this one. And this is where we need to be understanding where all the pieces come into play here, right? Is that if we take a look here, if we're relying on pilots and our line of play requires that pilot, how likely is it that we're going to have that pilot at hand? Pretty good odds to get at least one of them, but getting both, probably nil. Understanding our cost distribution doesn't really matter a whole lot here since so many cards are alike and our curve. And this is where the bell curve comes in, means that we have something that's shaped like a bell and we can see the concentration of cards, which is usually you want to see more stuff in the middle and not lopsided like a V. So let's take a deck that isn't so straightforward, like this Q-Bill AP, and take a look at what we're doing here. This deck has a lot of options to do a lot of things. And this is where we want to reiterate a couple of the key points we just talked about. Early on, pretty simple, right? You play those cards. Even turns 4 and 5 are pretty straightforward with playing those units if possible. What is not evident is what happens on turn 7. Because on turn 7, if you have a couple of options, then we get back to those situational problems where we go, is it better to blow up some people so that way I can play a pilot and a unit and a command card like Battle of Aces or Close Combat to finish off a unit? Am I behind and I need to start putting pressure on my opponent and play a card with suppression? Or am I in a good spot to where they can't do anything to me and they have blockers? Do I play this Shinanju and get behind maneuver off so that their blockers are useless? I can't tell you what's the right play here because you're going to have to play against those blocker decks enough times to kind of get a feel of what card to play on turn 7 would best benefit you in that situation. You also need to make sure that you, again, realize how likely the odds are that you're going to be drawing that. Like how often you're going to be able to draw that level 6 card on the turn you need it when you only have 6 cards in the deck. This is where playtesting comes in and helps because then you can playtest with your friends and see how often that situation came up. Recording those results, make it a thing. If you're losing games because you can't close a game out, maybe we need to see a way to get this more consistent to where we can get better players. Or if you're getting blown up too much, you might have to sub in some more blockers instead of playing more Kshatriyas even. And then the last thing I want to cover is understanding when some things are too good to be true, maybe they are. So again, This is where the line of play comes in. You see a show resolve. Is this card going to be better for you if you have a full hand than trying to use Mikazuki and the Barbados first one to swing out opponent? You still draw a card. You draw one less, but maybe that's a better way of going because you're putting pressure on your opponent. Is playing the Barbados fourth form better to save the Mikazuki pilot so that way you can go ahead and get suppression off? I don't know. It kind of depends where you're at again. Playing these faster decks, you might be encouraged to hurry up and break shields, so you might be spending more time playing these lower end units and trying to break shields than you are worrying about drawing cards. This is where the practice comes in again, where you can start figuring out against a blue-white deck, you may need to start breaking shields quicker. Same thing with green-white. If you're playing against another rush deck, you might have to trade more, and so therefore you might need to make sure that you get your blocker out. You may need to play this Gundam instead of dropping down 2 Barbadoses or 2 Hakurins, because you may need to be able to just start slowing them down. Playing your bases properly with the Corsica and the Nehal Argama. These all take resources that are precious to you in the game, and understanding the level distribution as well. You won't have an ability to play a level 5 or 6 or 7, and your level 4 units, your cost 4 units are sitting up at the higher end. And so you won't have access to, your harder hitters. And even then, your harder hitters don't hit hard as some other people, like a Camille on a Mark II. It's cheaper, hits harder, and will take out this guy. Even though he has suppression, doesn't do any good if you don't hit the shields. So you got to take that all in consideration when you figure out when to play a unit as well, when it benefits you more. So with that, I'm going to leave it there because at this point, I cannot take you any further on basics because everything now becomes deck specific. You should have picked a deck by now, or at least have a deck idea by now, to where you can play cards that you feel comfortable with, that you'll enjoy, that you're going to be able to commit to. And then start writing down all the results, good, bad, what you could have changed, doesn't matter, because you'll need that information as you go. It takes 10 times to fully be able to play a deck properly, 20 times to get a full understanding of how that deck feels, and 30 times to likely master it. And with that, got nothing else for you. We'll be back with our normal Operation Media report for news and weekly events. Our meta report will return this Friday since we've had a few regionals that I'd like to discuss. And then sometime this week, I'm hoping to put out the blue-white blocker Epion deck that I've been working on to kind of give you an idea of how this works out, hopefully by Friday, maybe Saturday at the latest, so that way you can kind of see how everything I've been teaching you kind of comes into play and give you guys a real-life definition so that way you have a week to kind of get better. And with that, this is Sal with Operation Meteor signing off.